The stove is hot. It's not just simmering anymore, Brooksy. It's hot, my guy.
San Diego today was big name, big name, big name, big name, one after the other. It's like they were all waiting for each other, you know? It's like after DeGrom decided to sign with the Texas Rangers, which was on our radar, but wasn't exactly what everyone – they thought the Mets were going to just keep him. You know, they have all the money in the world. They're going to spend it and find a way. As soon as he signed, the Mets were like, oh, all right, we need a backup plan. Boom, Justin Verlander in your face. Love that. $43 million a year, a third-year option at $35 million. He's going to be 40 years old before spring training starts. But that elbow, it's only 2 years old.
It's fair. We'll get into that a little bit deeper. No one better to bring on this show when the stove is hot than ESPN's Jeff Passan. He will be joining us on today's show. A lot of good stuff coming from him. Maybe he'll give us some insight into where Aaron Judge may or may not be signing. I don't know, man. I mean, he's expected to go to San Diego for the winter meetings this week. That's where all the GMs are, the agents. That's where everybody in the baseball world is right now. So it's just, I mean, it's hot right now, but I think there's a whole nother level that we could turn this stove up. And I think it's going to get there this week. And I think there's a lot of players that maybe want to go into the holiday season knowing where they're going to be playing. Trea Turner is knowing that he's going to be a Philadelphia Philly.
11 years, bro. 11 years.
$100 million. He's going to be 41 years old when his contract ends. Is that concerning at all to you?
Yes. He's a shortstop. Now, that body will age much better than, say, an Aaron Judge, who's 6'7", 280. You know, now, but a big part of Trea Turner's game is his speed, right? So at some point you get to 36, 37 years old, that speed is not the same as it was. So they're going to be eating a little bit towards the end of that contract. They know that, though. That's part of signing these big deals like that. I was curious of why he got 11 years because I thought 10 would be the number. So another team must have offered 10, and Philly said, fine, we'll give you 11. That had to be the case to get him to sign there.
I find it hard to believe that the Dodgers would have offered him 10 years when they wouldn't have offered Corey Seager that much. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody says that the Dodgers wanted to retain Trea Turner. That might be so. I don't think they'd be willing to re-sign Trea Turner if they were not willing to re-sign.
11 years was just weird to me. Like, 10 is a long time. So, like, where did the extra year come? Was it just
to age 40 season?
Right. And it could have been to get his AAV down a little bit. Mm-hmm. That extra year could possibly, split up the money a little more so they have more room every year under the luxury tax to spend more for their team. That's the longer you stretch out that contract, the less he makes per year. So that could be part of it as well.
In the past, seeing guys that are 30 years old sign long-term contracts. I'm not talking about 5 years. I'm talking about 10-year deals. The obvious one that comes to mind is Albert Pujols.
Right.
He was heading into his age 32 season when he signed with the Angels, and they cut him during his age 41 season. So he did not reach the conclusion of his contract. You're talking about a shortstop in Trea Turner, who, in my opinion, is the best shortstop in baseball.
Agreed.
As long as Tatis isn't on the field and healthy and all that. I believe Trea Turner is the best shortstop in baseball. I think he's the most athletic shortstop in baseball in regards to his speed, athleticism, as long as Tatis isn't on the field.
Tatis is an electric player and a very good hitter. Trea Turner's a better shortstop.
That might be. To each their own. I will say this, though. When you sign a guy for 11 years and he's heading into his age 30 season, his greatest attributes are his speed and athleticism. What happens when those two components go away? Because it's going to happen. That's just natural. Like we're not all going to be 38 years old and swiping bags anymore.
And as most people would say, oh, they'll just move to second base. We talked about this in past podcasts. Second basemen are important now with no shift. You need two shortstops. You need someone who has a lot of range at second base because you can't put another infielder over there anymore. So just moving him to second base isn't going to be the easy answer.
Mm-hmm. We'll ask Jeff Passan about that for sure. Let's move on to Max Scherzer. He's getting essentially the same deal that Max Scherzer got with the Mets last offseason. He's going to be making $43.33 million this year.
Redo that. You said let's get to Max Scherzer, not Justin Verlander.
Oh, I said shit. My bad. Let's transition to Justin Verlander. He's essentially going to be getting the same AAV. He is getting the same AAV.
Yeah.
Max Scherzer, $43.33 million. You mentioned it. He's going to be 40 years old this year. But they essentially chose a shorter, higher AAV, but a shorter contract to go with Verlander than they did DeGrom. According to reports, and this was Buster Olney, Jacob DeGrom never gave the Mets an opportunity to match that 5-year offer that the Rangers ended up agreeing with DeGrom on. So the Mets never had a chance. In my opinion, this is not a conspiracy theory by any means, just a theory. There's a reason that DeGrom didn't go back to the Mets and say, hey, do you want to match? Because the Mets probably didn't want to go 5 years with DeGrom. The Rangers knew they had to overspend and overlength a contract. If DeGrom thought he might get more money or more years with the Rangers, he'd have gone right back to Stevie Cohen and said, hey, are you willing to match? I think he knew that the Rangers offer was the best he was going to get in regards to length. Instead, the Mets are going a different direction, and they're going to be having Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander as a 1-2 punch in that rotation.
I think sometimes we look past the human element here. Maybe he didn't want to be in New York.
Maybe.
Yes, I agree. I don't think anyone else was going to give him 5 years. I didn't think anyone was giving him 4 years. I thought 3 would be the max. I thought we'd see him get 40 a year because someone can roll a dice on that for 3 seasons. I did not think we'd get a 5-year deal. He's a Southern boy. He's from Florida. He's always in boots. He's a cowboy. Maybe he wanted out of New York. That's a real thing, and that's not saying he disliked the Mets or disliked his teammates. Maybe he just wanted to play somewhere else.
State taxes too. State taxes in Texas.
That was my next point. Is he is going to make a lot more money with no state income tax in the state of Texas. Cost of living is different. It's way less. He's not going to be spending 10 grand a month in an apartment or more. Who knows what he's spending? Knowing him, he probably didn't have a ridiculous place. But it's just different in Texas. Now, and I think it's fun to go to a team that has a lot of hope. They're building, they're spending money. They have a GM who used to pitch in the big leagues. There's a lot of good things happening in Texas right now. They still have a lot of holes to fill. I still think they have a lot of moves to make if they want to compete with the Astros, the Mariners. Who knows what we're going to see with the Angels? They're making moves. It's going to still be it's a long road ahead for the Rangers if they're going to be competitive, but they're well on their way and they're making all the right moves up until this point.
There's some other hot stuff news, such as Ryan Reynolds requesting a trade. The Angels signed another reliever in Carlos Estevez. I don't want to keep Jeff waiting too long. So let me ask you this, and then let's get to Jeff. The Hall of Fame announcement. Fred McGriff, it was a contemporary committee, which is new.
16 voters.
And Fred McGriff is in, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, etc. Everyone else, they're out. So Fred McGriff is the only one that got voted in to Cooperstown. Your thoughts on, one, McGriff getting in, and then secondly, obviously the PED users such as Bonds, Clemens, Sosa, etc., not getting in.
I'm glad that they got this right because McGriff's a Hall of Famer. I think it's an absolute joke that the baseball writers never gave him more than 39.8% of the vote. Now, he was in some classes full of studs, but to never get more than 40% of the vote, I mean, this is one of the better run producers of his era. If you look at the longevity of his work, 19-year career, he hit 30 home runs 10 times and he did it with 5 different teams. He was one of 4 players to win a home run title in both leagues. That's really impressive. Now, a lot of people, the knock on him saying he wore too many jerseys. He played for too many teams. But if you look at it, that's just what a lot of people said. I don't agree with that. But if you look at every team he went to, he batted 3rd or 4th on every team he went to. He was the best hitter on that team in most cases. So I'm really happy for him. He's one of those guys who is loved by his peers. He's respected by his peers. There's nothing is tainted in his career. You know, he came up in an era where he was leading the league with 35 homers here and there. And then obviously towards later in his career, the steroid era happened and he was finishing like 20th in home runs. He was still hitting 30, 35 homers, just like most of the years of his career. But he was clean, you know? So to get to the steroid stuff, this looks like to me since Bonds, Palmeiro, Clemens, these guys got less than 4 votes. Like, this was their chance. Mm-hmm. And if these guys, and an issue here is a lot of these players who are on this committee that vote them in are players from the same era. They played against these guys. And a lot of these players are very vocal being against PEDs. Frank Thomas being one who's been very vocal about that. Greg Maddux is against it. Chipper Jones is against. These guys they can't put their head on the pillow at night and be okay with voting those guys into the Hall of Fame. Now,
they were the ones getting their asses beat.
Exactly. I mean, they had great careers. They're Hall of Famers.
Of course, yeah.
But you can't tell a story of baseball without Bonds. I just wanted a little history lesson here. So if you rewind back to 1994, the players went on strike. August 12th, the season halted. All right, the fans were pissed, and they should have been. If you look what was going on in that season, the Montreal Expos, who had only been in the postseason once, had the best record in baseball. Tony Gwynn was well on his way of hitting 400. Would be the first player since Ted Williams to do that. Matt Williams was on pace to break Roger Maris' single season home run record. Then boom, nothing. Season over, dead. Over. Shortened season in 95. 96, the fans still weren't showing up. But in 1996, a trend emerged, right? We're starting to see, oh, wow, people are hitting homers. 17 players had at least 40 home runs in 1996. In 93, there were only 5. I'm giving you a history lesson here, but this is fun. All right. Look, the steroid era brought excitement to the game in a time in which it needed something to pull the fans back in. I was one of those. I was 10 years old. All right. So I was waiting up at night to see home runs, to see highlights. I was getting up and reading the newspaper and watching highlights on ESPN, listening to the radio on the way to school to see, like, all right, it's 46 to 47, 48 to 49. I was so locked into that as a teen. I fell in love with baseball. I loved baseball before that, but I found a new level of love for baseball because of that. Point I'm getting at is the steroid era saved baseball. After a time where players went on strike, we've seen that as of late with the CBA negotiations and how nasty fans get about it. It saved baseball, in my opinion.
So are you team let every steroid user in, such as a Rafael Palmeiro?
What was that?
Are you team let every steroid user in, such as a Rafael Palmeiro?
Considering the era they played in, yes.
So Palmeiro's in, Sosa's in, McGuire's in.
Yes, I think they were a product of their era. Yeah. Something else I want to point out, and then I'll stop talking about this because we have Passan waiting on us. League revenue in 1995 was $1.4 billion. Fast forward to 2001, 6 years later, $3.7 billion.
It's a good stat.
2.5 times, right? Mm-hmm. Almost 3 times. It's insane. I just think baseball benefited big time from the steroid era. But the workhorses and the guys that drove that entertainment value of the product are being blacklisted and banned from being celebrated. But the league benefited from it. That's my issue.
We need to do a Hall of Fame episode soon because there's a lot to dissect there.
Yeah. That's my stance. A lot of people won't agree with me, but I just think if the game benefited from these players doing what they did, then we can't ban them if they essentially saved the game of baseball.
Certainly perspective, no doubt. I'll leave you with this. I threw this up on Twitter a couple days ago, and the Mike Trout lovers, by the way, I am a Mike Trout lover. They didn't love this. So age 19 through 30 seasons, Mike Trout, Andrew Jones. By the way, Mike Trout, this last season was his age 30 season. So this is up to Trout's, current. Andrew Jones has more hits, more total bases, more home runs, more RBI, more extra base hits, higher defensive WAR. He does have a less wins above replacement than Trout. Age 19 through 30 seasons. Of course, Andrew Jones considered one of the best gloves in center field of all time, not a Hall of Famer. And I know Andrew Jones had played more games between age 19 to 30. I know the plate appearances, the games played, all that. I get that. Andrew Jones, when you're talking about per at bat, Mike Trout head and shoulders better metrics and per at bat numbers than Andrew Jones. But guess what? When you're going to Cooperstown, they don't give a shit what you did on a per game basis, because there's certain guys that played 50 games and had a 900 OPS, but never saw another at bat in the bigs.
Right.
Everybody that talks about the whole counting stats thing, it matters. Yes, it's counting stats, but it's also showing longevity, and durability is the best ability of any sport. You can be a great player, but if you're never on the field, we never see those talents played. So Andrew Jones, arguably in his generation at that time, through his age 30 season, maybe he wasn't Mike Trout, but he was putting up Mike Trout numbers through his age 30 season, not in the Hall of Fame. That guy needs to be in.
He should be. Someone else. So Kurt Schilling is a borderline Hall of Famer, in my opinion.
Yeah, now we're getting political, because it has nothing.
Well, we don't have to get political, because I want to talk about his baseball.
I'm
not talking to politics.
Baseball card.
He didn't get a lot of votes because people don't like him.
Right, exactly. 100%.
But it's not only that. I do think he's a borderline Hall of Famer. 216 wins, 3.46 ERA. I'm looking at his numbers right now. There's only one pitcher in the Hall of Fame with less than 220 wins and above a 3.45 ERA. Only one. Jesse Haynes. He played for St. Louis in the 20s and 30s.
Oh, I remember that.
So I'm saying there's only one guy with similar stats to him that's in the Hall of Fame. So it's not like he's a shoo-in and, people just don't like him. No, he's actually just kind of like a borderline Hall of Famer. But I think the one thing that kind of gets him past borderline is how good he was in the postseason. Yeah. He's one of the top 2 or 3 postseason pitchers of all time, in my opinion. I think he's like, I don't have the numbers, but it was, I want to say like 12-2 or 11-2 with like a 2 ERA in his postseason career. Mm-hmm. Like really good. Over 3,000 strikeouts, over an 80 WAR. Like, I think he's a Hall of Famer, but he won't get in just because he pissed everybody off. And I hate that, just because, I don't know, I just think he should leave politics out of it. I think more than any other time in history, Hall of Fame voting is polarized based on moral issues because that's kind of like the era we live in right now. And I think Kurt pushed a lot of buttons. He's very outspoken about his beliefs. But based strictly on like the merits of his performance as a baseball player, I think we need to look at this more and say, well, maybe he is a Hall of Famer. But I don't know. We can talk about this all day. I had to mention Kurt because it's an interesting topic, to say the least.
We'll dive deeper in another episode. In the meantime, let's dive deeper into the hot stove one more time. Let's get to Jeff Passan. Known to the Twitter sphere as Wef Wasson, he really needs no introduction. ESPN senior MLB insider Jeff Passan. Welcome to the Wake and Rake Podcast, debuting on the Wake and Rake Podcast live from the Winter Meetings in San Diego. I think it's safe to say, Jeff, that the MLB Free Agency is, in the words of Mugato and Zoolander, is so hot right now. Would you agree?
Yeah, I wish I were a baseball player right now. They are just getting so much money in so many years, and it's a beautiful thing to see, because every time someone says baseball is dead, I can come back and say, if baseball were dead, then Jacob deGrom would not be getting 5 years and $185 million, and Trea Turner would not be getting 11 years and $300 million, and Rafael Montero wouldn't be getting 3 years and $34.5 million. And you can go on and on with just about every contract this offseason. They have exceeded industry expectations. And maybe the industry just doesn't understand where the money is going and where player salaries should be. And maybe the fact that they've been depressed for long enough that they're getting back to the point now where they belong. But seeing it and being in the middle of it and trying to chase it down is, what is it? It's fun. It's tiring. But it's a great rush knowing that, when I tweet something out, there are many, many people who are just sitting there and the alerts are popping up on their phones, and I make a lot of people's day, and it's pretty cool.
Is it becoming unpredictable right now just because it is changing and money is being thrown around and years are being thrown around? Like, I didn't think DeGrom would get 5 years. I knew someone like the
No.
Texas Rangers would have to overextend themselves to get him away from the Mets and Stevie Cohen and knowing how money grows on trees there now. Um, I didn't think he'd get more than 3 years. Honestly, I could see him
Yeah.
getting 40 a year, but
Yep.
three just because of his history. I was really surprised to see 5 years in Texas.
Okay, so let's talk about the unpredictable part, because that's an interesting question. I think the premise in the way that you described it actually makes a lot of sense. I think the terms are unpredictable, but I don't think the teams have necessarily been. Going into this offseason, if there was a big threat to get Jacob deGrom away from New York, it was Texas. Going into the offseason, if there was a big threat to get Justin Verlander away from Houston, it was going to be either Los Angeles or New York, and Los Angeles and New York were the last two teams. Going into the offseason, another one that I mentioned earlier, Montero, the Astros clearly want to maintain this bullpen that helped capture them a World Series. And to do so, if it takes a couple million extra a year, if it takes an extra year on the contract, teams are going to be willing to do that, because what I really appreciate and enjoy about this free agency period, and I think we saw this at the beginning with Robert Suarez as well, teams want to win. Like, teams want to win baseball games, and the only way to win baseball games is to have better players than the other team. And the only way to have better players than another team is either you have a great farm system and you're willing to go out and spend that prospect capital to get the great players, or you better throw around that cash. And you know what? They are throwing around cash right now because the industry's full of it.
That's a crossroads I think the Boston Red Sox are at right now. Is they have
Yes, it
this,
is.
wealth of prospects, and they built that system after Dombrowski left, and what he brought in and what he traded away to get what he got and get a World Series in 2018. But they've really built that system back up, and Chaim Bloom has done a great job with that. But they're kind of at that spot where they have to decide: are we going to spend real money? Are we going to get a shortstop? Are we going to get another starting pitching because we can't depend on Chris Sale to not flip his bike in the street? But it's a real thing. Like, they need to add. They added two great arms really good arms in the bullpen, which they need big help there. But they're at a crossroads where what you just said is you have to be willing to give up big name prospects and spend money if you're going to win, especially in the AL East.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but Marcelo Meyer's not going anywhere. Tristan Cassis isn't going anywhere. Nick York, probably not. Cedon Rafael. I mean, they've got guys and they have a chance to be good, but I don't know if they have a chance to be that good in 2023 unless they're going out.
Bridge years don't go over well in Boston.
They don't play. No, they but honestly, they shouldn't. Like, there shouldn't be bridge years for the Boston Red Sox.
Nope.
I'm sorry. Let's hold the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox and the Los Angeles Dodgers and the teams that have this foundational wealth, that have big television contracts, that either sell out their stadiums or they're going to be bringing in 30,000 plus people a night. Let's not give them the benefit of the doubt when it comes to this. The expectation in places like that should be World Series or bust every single season.
Year.
Well, if
they're not, I understand why fan bases get frustrated. And look, I live in Kansas City, right? And so I think there's the knowledge among the educated sports fan now that if you live in a market like Kansas City, if you live in a smaller market, then there are going to be some lean years when, if you've been good, hopefully, then you're going to be drafting later. If you're drafting later, the probability is lower. And yet those teams now are losing a whole lot of credibility with their fan bases because the San Diego Padres are going out and putting up $200 million payrolls every single season and truly embodying the "if you build it, they will come" ethos. Because Petco Park, I mean, the season ticket waiting list is like a thing there. And remember, the Padres at one point, there was a website called changethepadres.com. Well, guess what? The Padres changed and their fans started showing up. And I understand that it coincided with the Chargers leaving and a confluence of other factors. But the reality is, if you put together a winning ball club and you're anywhere but Tampa or Cleveland, they're going to show up.
But Jeff, we were told that owning a major league ball club was not profitable during the lockout this last offseason. So that's shocking news to me as a baseball fan myself. That's news to me. But hey,
you know what? I actually don't mind it when Major League Baseball and owners say that and try and spin it that way, because if they want to put something like that on the record when the truth is as evident as it is, then that's fine, as long as there are people who are willing to call them out on something that clearly is not true. If Major League Baseball teams were not profitable, I'm sorry, but franchise values would not go up commensurate the way they have. I understand that there's a finite number of teams, and so when you have a limited asset, and when you have the sort of asset that owning a professional sports franchise is, where there is glory and popularity and all the ancillary things that come along with it, that's like there's an inherent value in that that's difficult to put a number on. But if these were losing businesses, then smart businessmen and businesswomen would not buy them. And guess what? They do. They do. And that tells you everything you need to know right there about professional sports.
Yeah, see, Brooksy and I are pretty smart. At least we like to think we are. We just don't have that cash money to be able to buy a team. Maybe someday along the line we will. That's actually a good segue when talking about the Padres. Everybody's talking about Aaron Judge. He's currently at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game right now. Could a team other than the San Francisco Giants and the New York Yankees get involved? Mark Feinsand reported today that Yankees and the Giants are still the front runners. But in that same token, or in that same phrase, other teams remain, quote, on the periphery. That was according to Mike Feinsand. So in your mind, Giants, Yankees, still the front runners. Could another team get involved? And is there a legitimate shot for Aaron Judge landing with a team other than those two?
I think that Aaron Judge right now has the world in the palm of his hand, because there's no deadline for him to sign. The desire and the hope was that something could get done at or around the winter meetings. But if another team, whether it's one that's been spurned by other free agents or one that sees the market right now and says, we feel like there's more value that we can get out of Aaron Judge, even if we're going to be paying him in excess of $300 million, that they could jump in. And it's like with the trade, all it ever takes is one offer to change the entire calculus. So I'm not ruling it out at all, nor I think should anybody. But I also think it's fair to say right now, the Yankees and the Giants are the distinct favorites, and that if he were to sign anywhere other than one of those two places, it would be an absolute shock.
Were you surprised at pretty much the base offer from the Yankees being 8 years? Because I was. I thought we might see a first 50 a year guy at 6 year 300, and that way Yankees aren't stuck, with a 37-year-old DH paying him, what's probably going to end up being 40 a year at that point. Yeah. But if the base offer is 8 at 300, it's just up from there. He's going to end up signing a 9-year deal with the Giants, and we're looking at a 39-year-old DH, and hopefully it doesn't.
Here's the thing. But the end of those contracts, teams almost build in the idea that we're not going to get a whole lot of production. Like, honestly, Trea Turner's deal is for 11 years at $300 million. The Phillies don't anticipate Trea Turner being an extremely productive player past the 7th season. You can't. But because of the way that the CBT works, the more years you put there, the lower that CBT number is. And they did it with Bryce Harper, 13 for 330. They're doing it with Trea Turner, 11 for 300. And if they got to eat some stuff at the end of it, then that's the price of doing business. The Phillies act like I think every fan wishes their team would act, which is kind of irrationally, a little bit of like drunk guy spending. And you know what? It's all in service of where are we right now? Because the truth is, I have no idea what the landscape of Major League Baseball is going to look like at the winter meetings in 2023. And neither do you, Danny, and neither do you, Will, and neither does anyone in the industry. We don't know what production is going to look like. We don't know where people's lives are. We don't know shit. We don't know anything. And so if you're trying to win right now, good for you. Like, that's the way to get a fan base to embrace your ball club. They're going to root for the laundry all the time because that's what we've been trained to do as sports fans. But if you really want to get them engaged beyond, I'm just a fan, no, I'm not just a fan of, I love this team, then show me how you're going to win right now. And Steve Cohen, who among owners may be the most voracious fan there is treating the New York Mets like that. I mean, he has gone out in the last 2 years and signed two pitchers who were combined at the time of their signing 76 years old to contracts that no pitcher had ever gotten before, AVs of $43+ million. And why did he do that? Even though they're a combined 76 years old, they're still awesome, and they can still make the New York Mets a much more formidable team when it comes to contending in a National League East. That's an absolute meat grinder.
Explain to me this then. All these players, all these teams are seemingly willing to spend some money and compete. Why is Carlos Correa seemingly not getting the big contract that he wants? When I look at his numbers,
I'm just gonna. He will.
Okay, so if Trea Turner's getting 300, Carlos Correa is also going to be in that same department.
Yeah, I think he's going to get over 300. At this point, I thought that he was going to be 300 million plus before Turner. After Turner, I think it's guaranteed at this point. I can't imagine a scenario in which he takes any less than Trea Turner gets right now. He's younger. He is, if not his equal, then potentially a superior player, definitely a better glove. Bat is right there. Speed's not the same. I mean, completely different kind of player, but they're both like truly elite guys. The market for Carlos Correa collapsed last year. He could have had 10 years and $275 million from the Tigers before Javi Baez ended up signing with them. He thought he was going to do better. Market didn't play itself out that way. So instead, he got $35 million to play a year with the Twins to show that organization that he is the type of leader and type of person that you want to build a franchise around. The Twins absolutely love him. The San Francisco Giants, if they don't sign Aaron Judge, are going to need someone to pivot to. Carlos Correa is a perfect guy there. And listen, I don't think Correa has any lack of suitors at this point. And I do think ultimately he's not going to get left out like he did last year.
I think the shortstop market and these numbers we're seeing, Xander Bogaerts is just sitting back going, I'm going to wait this out because every time someone signs, my number just climbs. And the Boston Red Sox are going, oh no, we're going to lose him. We might legitimately lose him now because we're going to have to pay him a lot more than we wanted to. We know a lot more than they wanted to. I see Trea Turner and Correa in a tier just above.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Bogaerts, but I mean,
I think the tiers are Correa and Turner, Bogaerts, and then probably a little bigger drop, and you get Swanson then. But Xander Bogaerts is, I mean, he's in the catbird seat right now. Like, he is just sitting back and loving life because he's got the skill set and tool set that really plays in modern baseball. I don't know if Xander Bogaerts is going to be a shortstop for the entirety of whatever contract he signs, but I do know he's going to hit. You saw it up close and personal. The guy will hit until he's 100 years old, and the contact orientation there, the power that he's got, I think it's a swing that ages well. I think there are leadership qualities there too. You know this. Anytime there is a player who speaks Spanish and English and has personality in a clubhouse, that's as big of a glue guy as you can get because it's somebody who speaks
7 or 6 languages. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure there's a lot of Papiamento in those clubhouses.
That's a good point. Yeah, he can talk to Profar. Who was that? Scope, Jansen. That's about it.
I was going to say anyone who's from Curacao or Aruba, he's got them on lock. But he is widely regarded as a great guy, as a leader, as somebody you want in your clubhouse, as a winning player. I mean, all these things that are intangible, but this time of year, intangibles play. And unless you have just off the charts spectacular talent, Jacob DeGrom, no one is going to see him as somebody who's going to be outspoken or getting up and giving pep talks. The guy's just like the best pitcher in the world when he's healthy, so that's why he got $185 million.
I do think intangibles aren't as important as they used to be, though, just because of the metrics and analytics and how players are broken down and graded and how you put them in certain classes. I feel like the intangibles, you see the glue guys, the Johnny Gomes and Nick Puntos. You don't really have those players anymore because of how they can project.
I think intangibles are more important than they used to be.
Tell me more then, because I want to hear this.
Here's why I think they are. I think because they used to be valued a lot more highly than they are now. And right now they're a depressed asset. And because we can't quantify them, it's difficult to put value on them. Because we can't put value on them, it's difficult to lend credence.
So it's more important because there's less of it, basically.
No, I don't think there is less of it. I think there's as much of it as there used to be. I just don't think it's appreciated quite like it used to be. And when you can put your finger on it, then, I think the Phillies this year were full of intangibles, guys. It was a great clubhouse. And I think the excellence of that clubhouse is what took them, a team that wasn't as talented as some of its competitors, and sent it to the World Series this 100%. Year. And so, yeah. And so I think it's there. I think it's always going to be there. When you put 26 guys in a room, you're going to have leaders. You're going to have people who keep the clubhouse loose. You're going to have guys who you can turn to when you're having a shitty day or when you feel like you can't swing anymore and this game has defeated you, and they pick you back up. And those guys, I think inside the industry, people have a decent idea of who those guys are. I just don't think they get paid because they're not, right. I'm sorry, but you don't have grit on a guy's savant page.
Yeah, the first guy that comes to mind is like a Brett Phillips, maybe, but the Orioles picked him right back up after the Tampa Bay Rays either DFA'd him or released him or whatever they did with him. So, hey, Brooksy,
the first guy that comes to mind with that for me is Kyle Schwarber. Like, Kyle Schwarber is a leader, and I understand that the Phillies gave him $80 million because he hits nukes. But what they got from Kyle Schwarber, in addition to the National League leading home run total, is he was the rabbi of that clubhouse. Like, he was the guy who was dispensing advice, and if you had an issue, you could go to him. JT Realmuto's got that too. They had a bunch of leaders in that clubhouse, and leadership's such a difficult thing to quantify, but it's a very Supreme Court definition of pornography. You know it when you see it.
Brooksy, I got one more for Jeff here before we turn things into fifth gear. And I'll give you the floor before heading over to rapid fire. But Jeff, the teams that we know right now are wanting to spend. Obviously, the Phillies just spent with Turner. San Francisco and New York are going to be in on Aaron Judge. The Dodgers are now going to have to replace a center field position and shortstop position. Is there any teams that nobody's discussing or putting into these conversations that could come out of the weeds and all of a sudden play a factor in free agency?
I think the Blue Jays could. I think the Orioles could. I think the Red Sox could. I think the Twins could. I think the Rangers still could spend. I don't look past the Braves as being a team. I think the Cardinals certainly could. You didn't mention the Cubs, though, right?
Brooksy and I talked about the Cubs a little bit with Correa possibly being a potential fit.
Yeah, I think the Cubs are going to do something. I don't know what that something is at this point, but the Cubs want to win this year, and I think they have a chance to get a whole lot better through free agency. And they're not as good of an example as any of a team, but I will say this: the franchise-changing moment for them was when they signed John Lester for 6 years and $155 million. Completely changed both internally and externally the outlook of that team. It shows the power of free agency. When you are saying to your team, when you're saying to the guys in that clubhouse, we're going to win, it sends quite a message. And I think by going out and signing one of the shortstops, the Cubs would be sending that message.
So you got any more before we turn things up in here? Make things.
Nope. Let's do a little rapid fire, and we'll let him go break some more news.
Yeah, he's got babies to kiss and everything. So a little rapid fire, Jeff. Quick questions, quick answers. First one on my docket here. Who do you believe is the face of baseball heading into the 2023 season?
Shohei Ohtani.
What is your favorite stadium to cover a game at?
Ooh. I love San Francisco.
I kind of want to follow up. Any reason for that? Is it better food or better amenities?
I haven't been there for a while, so I don't know if the press. I usually base it on how low the press box is, so I have a better view of the game. But I also get the sourdough chowder bread bowl, and goddamn, it's good.
I don't know if you're a fan of the eighth inning seagull rush to the outfield stands. You notice that?
Listen, I do, and I think people getting shit on by birds is one of the funniest things in life. Like it happened to my child, my poor younger son. He was about a year old, and he has like this beautiful curly hair, and all of a sudden I looked down, and it was like a bird thought it was a bird's nest and just dropped one straight in there. I have a picture of it. It's saved in my favorites. I'm a terrible dad. I'll admit it.
Love it. Love it. When did you first break out the Elmo voice, and why?
It was in a parking lot at a Chiefs game, and we were stuck in traffic. It was me, my oldest son, and we have two twin boys across the street who were with us. And we were stuck in traffic, and I was trying to kill time and not just turn on the radio and have like that awkward silence when everyone's listening to the radio. I wanted to keep them engaged. And I knew I could do an Elmo voice because I don't know if you guys have ever seen Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but Meatwad is one of the characters on it. And I realized I can do Meatwad, and Meatwad is like Elmo's cousin. And I wanted to make the boys laugh. And so I started doing inappropriate Elmo for these children and saying just unseemly things that I probably shouldn't have in front of children. I'm very sorry, Shanna and Eric Peters across the street, for defiling your boys like that. But the Elmo actually started off as inappropriate Elmo.
Man, we're getting deep now. Last one I have. Who is your? We're about to expose Jeff Passan to everybody on the web right now. Last one I have is, who is your favorite player to interview?
Oh God.
Other than Will Miller.
You know what? I'm going to take a cop-out answer here, and it's Daniel Hudson, because I wrote a book about him, and he, without knowing me, opened up his life to me for the course of 4 years that I was doing that book. And I deeply respect him as a human being, as a father, as a husband, as a baseball player, as a paragon of sticking with something when it doesn't love you back. And the fact that he has carved out the career that he has now, considering everything he went through, I think he's an exceptional human being. And every time I get to talk with him, it's just like catching up with an old friend more than it is interviewing someone. So, I mean, the guy let me, I was there when his child was born. I don't know if you guys remember this, but it was like, right when the Nationals were in the middle of their World Series run, and he left the team to go see the birth of his third daughter, and got lambasted by some people who shall go unnamed. And, I was there with him telling the story of what it's like for a baseball player to be a human being. And that's exactly what he was. And that's why I love him.
Well, speaking on that same note, the first time I think I reached out to you was about Drew Robinson,
Yeah.
excuse me. And because I played with Petey, I played with him in Texas in 2017 in AAA. Got to know him on a really personal note, and he stayed at my apartment with me and got to know him. And that was obviously a crazy story in itself. And I mean, crazy is not even the word. A miracle is.
Oh no, crazy. Yeah, crazy is appropriate.
Crazy is probably the first word you go to, but I mean,
yeah.
if you for everyone listening, if you haven't read the Drew Robinson story and what's going on in his life post baseball, go look into it. We don't have to get into it here, but that was phenomenal work by you. It's just like real life stuff. Baseball is a fantasy world, right? It is. What was that?
When I talk with people, I understand the frivolity of breaking news. It's essentially my way to give the public a dopamine rush, right? Like when you look down and you see an alert on your phone and it says breaking, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, what's going on here? Your brain just starts going crazy. But I do those things so that more people can follow and see the work that I care more deeply about, which is stories like Drew's, which is stories about human beings. And like, we take for granted that ball players are people because they have this superhuman talent and this exceptional ability to go do something. But, beneath every person's savant page, reference page, what they're doing on the broadcast on Nesson or Yes or SNY or Bally Sports that night, there is a human being, and every human being, whether he is a baseball player, she is anything else, we all have stories to tell, and finding the best of those stories is what I truly deeply love about this job.
It's funny you mentioned that. I want to let you go. I'm spreading you as soon as I possibly can. I was talking with Rachel Ulrich, who's one of your guys' MLB editors. And
yeah, she's my boss.
Yeah. She does a hell of a job, too. She's great. She's just a really good woman.
She's the best editor I've ever worked for. She's fantastic.
We were talking about you, and she asked me the question, what do I like about your work? And not to toot your horn too much, but I said, I think his breaking news gets all the attention, but it's really your writing that I enjoyed the most. When you do deep dives on Drew Robinson's and Daniel Hudson. So you do terrific work. And we can't thank you enough for coming on board here, the Wake and Rake podcast, and sharing your talents with us. This was a blast, man.
You know what the best part of this whole thing was? The fact that a golden retriever just walked right in the shot at the end of it here. That is phenomenal.
That is Melky.
Yeah, Melky. He always finds a way into the shot. He always does. Every episode.
He's been drug tested and he's very clean.
You made the joke before I could.
That is his namesake, Melky Cabrera. He's clean though. He's as clean as it can be. Hey, stay safe down there, San Diego. All right, have fun down there. Don't break too much. Break it up.
I was going to say, when you say stay safe, before I left, my wife said to me, do you need your passport? And I was like, sweetheart, nothing good happens in TJ. I'm going to leave that at home.
Oh, yeah. I played in San Diego. Nope. Stay north.
Late night Mexican food. Try out Trujillo's, and you got to hit up Hodad's if you're looking for
I was just about to say, you got to go to Hodad's. Hodad's the best burger place I've ever been to.
It's the best city in America.
Yeah. I got married here, and I also appreciate the fact that you two are telling me places that I can't go because I don't leave the hotel, and it's a sad, pathetic existence. And
Uber Eats.
Yeah, that's not a bad point, actually.
There's not a bad point. Well, I'm not going to say where are you staying, but I would assume you're downtown.
I'm at the hotel where the meetings are.
That is also, we can edit that out because that was a bonehead move on my part. There's a Hodad downtown. There's also the original by the beach, but the one downtown is not far from me, so it will still be fresh and be in one piece.
What's the burger of what's the go-to burger there?
Oh my God,
it just
what
a
is it
straight
called?
up hamburger?
Just a straight up hamburger.
You can't go wrong, but there's one. I'll text you. I have to look it up. It's been 7 years because I'm lose my mind trying to remember this. But I'll text it to you when I remember.
I was going to say the headline of this podcast is going to be Will Middlebrooks got old and forgetful.
That's the title of our last 5.
34, man. I'm 34. It's my big poppy year.
Thank you for having me, fellas.
Hey, man. Thanks for coming on. This was fun.